tariffs range from anywhere like 7.5% to 100+%.
This is like gambling with tariffs, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting that this has now emerged. I guess it's a sign that Wall Street is betting that the Supreme Court will strike down the IEEPA tariffs, I think. Tariffs are due once you import your product, but you don't get paid from your customer depending on your agreement and your terms many months later. So you are stuck fronting the cost of the tariffs, and it creates a huge cash flow issue on the company.
Welcome back to another Traction Control. I'm Stacey Miller, and I have with us a very special guest. Her name is Angela Chiang, and she's our Director of International Affairs here at the Auto Care Association. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Stacey.
How long have you been with the association?
It's actually my 11th year anniversary this month.
11 years today. That's a really amazing tenure. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I'm so proud to work with Angela. And for those who don't know, Angela really runs our trade and our tariffs department, which is obviously a very contentious topic right now. So thank you, Angela, for all that you do on a day-to-day for our members. Angela is literally working 24/7 through the night, tracking everything that's happening, every single tweet. It's pretty amazing. So one, I wanted to bring Angela on here to let members know that she's got your back and to kind of just distill a little bit of what's happening currently in the tariffs landscape. It's changing very rapidly, so this may go out of date really quickly, but Angela's really fantastic at keeping everybody up to date on the web, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you can access those updates. So, Angela, let's just start with a little bit about what your day-to-day is like right now, because I think it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stacey. I think there's a lot going on. It's very difficult for our members to navigate all the different trade policies and tariffs that are coming out and changing on an everyday basis. So part of my role here at AutoCare is to monitor the changes through the president's executive orders, his announcements, monitor what our trading partners are doing with their trade policy and how it may impact our international suppliers, and helping our members just navigate how these tariff changes are impacting their businesses.
Definitely a 24/7 job, especially in this landscape. And I mean, you have a wealth of experience even before AutoCare. What did you do before AutoCare that brought you here?
Yeah, that's funny. I was actually at a law firm in the International Trade Department as their trade specialist. There, I focused more on anti-dumping and countervailing duties, including some trade policy.
And countervailing and anti-dumping, those are also issues that impact the aftermarket too, right?
Yes, there are a number of products in the auto parts industry that are subject to anti-dumping countervailing duty orders.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we have a ton to talk about. There's going to be a part 1, 2, 3, and 4. But let's just start with the current landscape of tariffs. And obviously there's a lot going on. There's a lot that's happened. There's a lot that could happen. But just give me a lay of the land and give our audience a lay of the land. Let's start with the 232 and kind of like what the current status is there.
Sure. I know there's been a lot of changes with the 232. So let's just start with a background on the Section 232 tariffs. These authorize the president to restrict imports, and these are typically done through tariffs if it's determined that the imports are threatening U.S. national security. So in the auto parts industry, we're seeing Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum and auto parts and copper. And the goal is to protect industries critical for defense and economic stability. And over the past couple months and over the past couple years, we're seeing more and more 232 investigations that are either in effect right now or on the horizon.
So 232 is affecting a lot of auto parts manufacturers currently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the most recent development that we're trying to navigate is instead of the exclusion process that we're kind of used to with the Section 301 tariffs, where you can request a part to be excluded from the tariffs, the Department of Commerce has now announced a inclusion process where stakeholders can now submit comments to the Commerce Department for additional products to be subject to now the auto parts tariff and also the steel and aluminum tariff.
Wow, that's a complicated that's a complicated landscape to navigate. So whether your parts are excluded from the tariffs or say it one more time, included in help me summarize it?
Yeah, it's an inclusion process. So currently there is a list of auto parts and a list of steel and a list of aluminum products that are subject to the tariff. So now there's an opportunity to add more parts to that list that would be now subject to the tariffs.
And what's the advantage or the disadvantage of adding yourself to the inclusion list versus the exclusion list?
So right now, there's currently no exclusion process, so members really need to monitor the inclusion docket to see if their products are being proposed to be added to the inclusion list. And if you see your product on the list, it's an opportunity for you to file comments in response to that proposal, so that you can make a determination if you want to submit a public comment.
And those comments are pretty important, right? If you're a manufacturer, you're going to want to take the opportunity to do that, right?
Yes, because I mentioned earlier, there's no exclusion process. So if you don't take this opportunity to make your voice heard and submit a comment on the docket on why you want or don't want your part to be part of the inclusion, you may miss this opportunity. And in the future, your parts may be subject to the tariff.
Okay. Is there any date offhand that you know that those comments need to be submitted by, or is it TBD?
Yeah, I think I will double check, but I think the window for auto parts starts actually on October 1st, and stakeholders have 2 weeks to submit comments, and it's followed by public comments.
Okay. Does AutoCare help with the filing of those comments if members need help figuring out or navigating how to submit those and what to say?
AutoCare can definitely help with how to file the comments, where to find the docket, and what information to include on the submission. So that's something we can help our members do. Amazing.
So you mentioned 301 tariffs earlier as well. So tell me a little bit about those.
Yeah, the Section 301 tariffs, many of you may remember, they were imposed back in the first Trump administration in 2018. And there were lists 1, 2, 3, 4A. And they span across multiple product categories, multiple industries, and those are still in effect. And those tariffs range from anywhere like 7.5% to 100+%. And right now, most of those exclusions that were previously approved have now expired. A very small handful are still in effect, the exclusions. And currently, USTR has a process for members affected by the exclusion to file comments to request an extension of that exclusion.
Do you know offhand any trends in those exclusions, like what they allowed to be excluded?
Yeah, they look at domestic production, if they're able to source that product outside of China, if they've made any attempt on sourcing outside of China, and all of these factors will be taken into account when they review the exclusion process.
Okay, that's really helpful, because I wonder how many parts manufacturers are applying, how many parts have been applied for exclusions, and then, what percent of those actually get through would be something interesting that we should monitor and share. Mm-hmm. So, and then tell me how to pronounce this. I think they say IEEPA, IEEPA. That's kind of like a newer one for me. So let's break that down.
Yeah, the IEEPA tariffs were announced earlier this year, and they were on fentanyl-related IEEPA tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. We also know the reciprocal tariffs. Those are also IEEPA tariffs, and they were imposed on a number of our trading partners.
Is the Supreme Court case related to the IEEPA tariffs?
Yeah, there has been some media coverage about the IEEPA tariffs being heard now at the Supreme Court. There's 2 cases that have been consolidated and are being heard at the Supreme Court with oral arguments due in early November. So we may get a decision by end of December or early 2026. And if, let's say, the Supreme Court strikes down the IEEPA tariffs as being outside the president's authority to impose tariffs, importers may be eligible to seek refunds on the tariffs that they've paid under IEEPA.
Wait, they could get a refund for the tariffs that they have already paid and get that money in full or in part? Do we know?
So while the Supreme Court cases move forward, we're advising our members to preserve their refund rights. First is to identify shipments that were subject to the IEEPA tariff and also tracking the liquidation dates closely. Liquidation cycle is generally 314 days from import. So importers need to file a protest within 180 days of liquidation so that you remain eligible for any potential refunds.
Wow. And then related to that refund, I heard we were in a meeting earlier and there was a Washington Post article that was talking about like buying the rights to the, like, explain to me what's happening, because this is really interesting and I didn't even know that this was possible.
Yeah, this is where it kind of gets interesting, where Wall Street has entered the picture. So in the Washington Post, there was an article recently saying investment firms are now buying refund rights from importers for that refund claim in the event that the Supreme Court strikes down the tariff. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if an importer paid $1 million in IEEPA tariffs, some firms are offering, let's say, 20 cents on the dollar. So they are offering you roughly $200,000 to have claims to that refund. So you can either take that $200,000 and walk away, and we don't know what may happen with the Supreme Court decision. Then the investment firm will have the rights to claim that refund if the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs.
This is like gambling with tariffs, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting that this has now emerged. So it's something very interesting that we're watching.
Wow. I mean, I don't know what the parallel is, that we're about to head into Apex and go to Vegas, and now we're gambling on whether or not we're going to get the tariff refund. So that's really interesting. Really looking forward to see what comes of that, because that seems pretty positive, right?
Yeah, I guess it's a sign that Wall Street is betting that the Supreme Court will strike down the IEEPA tariffs, I think.
I wonder what they're hedging that bet on.
Yeah.
To be seen. All right. That's wow. I'm learning so much during this episode about tariffs, and we're so lucky that we have Angela here to help us distill it into plain speak, because there's a lot to keep track of. And one of the other things that Angela keeps track of is all of the executive orders that come out dealing with tariffs. So we know that President Trump will share a tweet or post on X about something that's going to happen, and then immediately Angela's on the computer waiting for the next executive order to understand exactly what is being instated. So there's a new one, and it has something to do with truck and truck parts. It hasn't happened yet, but he said something about truck and truck parts, which is relevant to our industry, right?
Yeah. So earlier this year, the Commerce Department started an investigation on a Section 232 investigation on truck and truck parts and imports, and whether that's threatening U.S. national security. And just last week, the president announced, I think on his social, that tariffs are coming on truck and truck parts, effective October 1st at 25%. So we don't know the details. We're awaiting to see the executive order once that comes out.
Fantastic. I mean, clarity is so important when there's so much information on the internet. One of the things that AutoCare strives to do is make sure that its members and the industry at whole have the most updated information, up to date as it happens on the minute, which is Angela's job. She does a fantastic job at it. And really just making sure that businesses have the information that they need in order to operate, because you don't know if you're operating on a 10% or a 25% and how much money you're going to have to front. Are you going to have that inventory, right? These are all really important considerations for the industry. So you talk to our members all the time about this as you're helping them file comments, you're understanding the impact on their businesses. Just generally, what kind of feedback are you hearing? Because I would imagine that it's kind of across the spectrum in terms of how our members are reacting to the tariffs.
AutoCare represents such a diverse membership, but I think we're hearing some common threads across our members. One is just the administrative burden of the sheer amount of information that's coming out from the administration, and trying to understand it, navigate the different changes that are that we're seeing on a weekly basis. And this is all information. This is all time and resources that's being pulled away from the company that would otherwise be dedicated towards reinvesting or growing the company. Another issue is compliance challenges, especially with the Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum, where now it's based on content and requiring details like where the steel and aluminum are poured or melted, and having that documentation readily available when customs requires it. So for companies with multi-tier supply chains, this could be information that could be time-consuming to gather, and many suppliers are working to fill those gaps so that they ensure their information is compliant. Another issue that I'm hearing from members is the cash flow issue, where tariffs are due once you import your product, but you don't get paid from your customer depending on your agreement and your terms many months later. So you are stuck fronting the cost of the tariffs, and it creates a huge cash flow issue on the company.
So this is a really time-consuming effort on behalf of our members, on behalf of the entire industry, to distill the information, to figure out what they need to submit, and then to figure out how to run their business in this kind of landscape of uncertainty. But really thankful that they have you on their side and the entire Auto Care team. You're constantly producing some resources that our members can access on the Auto Care website. Can you tell them a little bit about that?
Sure. We've developed a dedicated trade website called autocare.org/trade, where we post background information on all of the executive orders that come out in response to the different tariffs and trade programs that are affecting our members. We also have a tariff calculator. Because of the number of tariffs that are now in place, they stack and interact differently with each other, which can be very difficult to understand. So the tariff calculator helps our members understand which tariffs stack on top of each other and which do not.
That's incredibly helpful. And I think I haven't seen a tool like that across the internet. And I kind of went and I played with it myself. And I was like, okay, if I have a brake part from China that's this percent this and this percent that, then I immediately get returned what that tariff could be. And you can look it up by the HTS codes as well. So really cool tool. I really encourage our members to check that out. If they haven't heard of it yet, that's at autocare.org/trade. So Angela, thank you for joining us and giving us just a really brief overview of what's happening. She's going to be tracking this on your behalf and answering your questions. You can visit the website. There's a way to reach out to Angela there. And if you have any comments, suggestions, questions, feel free to leave them in the comments for us, whether you're on Spotify or you're watching on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know how we can help you navigate some of these challenges more. Here on Traction Control, I'm Stacey Miller. Thanks, Angela, for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacey.